Formula One teams had completed a full winter's testing and development by the time they got to Phoenix for the first Grand Prix of the year. For some, the future stretched ahead, barren and uncertain. Others hoped to blossom into genuine contenders. Some already were. Phoenix was the initial proving ground, a difficult, bumpy street circuit with very hard walls. Temporary accommodation trackside erected for the spectators, and the track itself taking a repeated hammering over the weekend from the cars, turning a weak spot into a pothole. World champion Ayrton Senna returned to McLaren after an unusually long winter's break. Most of the testing done by Gerhard, Berger, and neither of them rated the new Honda V12 very highly. How important now the management skills of Ron Dennis, in charge of the championship favourites. According to him, Ferrari had come out top of the winter testing. 3 times world champion Alain Prost was their number one, partnered by the French Sicilian Jean Alesi, recruited from Tyrrell after contractual battles with almost every other team in Formula One. Phoenix was where he'd impressed in 1990, holding off Ayrton Senna for first place for some 34 laps.
You know, I think we work very hard all the winter. We have a very competitive car. Now we have to race and to see what will happen.
After 2 years at Ferrari, Nigel Mansell was back at Williams. He'd been persuaded to change his mind about retirement by Frank Williams. Mansell convinced he had the package to win races, with the ever-improving Renault engine, the vital ingredient.
I'll make a statement and say for sure we're going to win some races. I don't think there's any question about that, but we've just got to see if we can be reliable. The car was late coming off the line, and we are suffering even today because of that. But as I said, everyone's pushing very hard. There's no lack of effort anywhere in the team, and we have just got to be patient and hope that it all comes together for us. And if it does, then who knows?
Riccardo Patrese, the most experienced Formula One Grand Prix driver of all time, 208 Grand Prix and 3 wins going into the 1991 season. Weighing in for his 14th Grand Prix year and his second with Benetton, Nelson Piquet. 3 times world champion, partnered by his Brazilian teammate and great friend Roberto Moreno. Benetton had finished off the 1990 season with a flourish. Wins in Japan and Australia. They were in optimistic mood, the only one of the top teams running on Pirelli tyres, and they had designer John Barnard, with his reputation for innovation and winning. Tyrrell anticipated their best season for years, powered by the Honda V10 and designed by the former Ferrari man Harvey Postlethwaite. The talented Stefano Modena was expected at last to fulfill his potential. The Formula One newcomers Jordan had as team principal the charismatic Irishman Eddie Jordan. They graduated through Formula 3000 and they produced for Formula One a sleek car that ran as smartly as it looked.
Is it more difficult than Formula 3000?
I'll tell you after pre-qualifying tomorrow, but of course it is. There are 15, 16 world-class teams here. They're the best in the world. They've got all very good budgets. They have got excellent drivers. They know exactly what they're doing. Technology in terms of the design, all excellent. I have to believe that our own is particularly good as well. So from that point of view, I feel that on the team side that we're in very good shape.
Jordan's drivers, Bertrand Gachot, he had brief race experience with Onyx, Real and Coloni, and Andrea De Cesaris, 150 Grand Prix but only 38 points. Another newcomer to the Grand Prix scene, Modena, like Jordan, forced initially to pre-qualify. Lamborghini built both engines and cars. Charged with the task of leading the team, the Italian Nicola Larini, while his teammate was the Belgian Eric van der Poel, tasting Formula One for the first time, having progressed through Formula 3000. Just like Mark Blundell of Britain, here with his Brabham teammate Martin Brundle. Brundle, of course, determined to be number one. The Finn Mika Hakkinen, the British Formula 3 champion, he made his Formula One debut with Lotus. Frenchman Eric Comas, the Formula 3000 champion, came into Formula One with Ligier, where he partnered the vastly experienced Thierry Boutsen. And Pedro Chaves from Portugal, he attempted to make his name at Coloni, but at Phoenix at least, he was doing it for all the wrong reasons in pre-qualifying. That became a familiar sight in the 1991 season. Ayrton Senna took pole position at Phoenix a second quicker than anyone else, despite his reservations about the Honda V12 engine. Alongside him on the front row, Alain Prost. The Ferrari, he said, not suited to the Phoenix streets. Riccardo Patrese was the best of the rest, out-qualifying his teammate Nigel Mansell for third place on the grid. A broken drive shaft hampered Mansell's progress on his return to Williams, although Alain Prost was just one driver who was said to be impressed with the new Williams Renault. Nelson Piquet qualified 5th, almost 2 seconds slower than Ayrton Senna, while Jean Alesi, having set his quickest time in the Friday session, then suffered a most embarrassing moment, with influential eyes observing. Alesi's slide and collision into the wall left the Ferrari team with plenty to occupy them overnight. But it wasn't just the young Chargers that found Phoenix a handful. Here we're on board with Gerhard Berger, backwards at 100 miles an hour. Eventually he set the 7th fastest time. So now on to the race itself. Your commentator, Simon Taylor.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, the first green light of the season, and Ayrton Senna started as he meant to go on, out-accelerating Prost's Ferrari and the Williams Renaults. But Prost was slotting neatly into second place from Mansell and Patrese, with Berger and Alesi and the Benettons in hot pursuit. As always, the unyielding walls of Phoenix required accuracy as well as speed, but Ayrton had plenty of both, and he had no trouble in pulling out a big lead. The new McLaren was looking like a winner from race 1. As the rest of the field gave chase, there were problems further back. Mika Häkkinen had a strange one. He'd knocked his steering wheel release, and unable to steer the car, had this mighty spin. Behind second man Prost, Riccardo Patrese went for Mansell's third place and came off worst in the ensuing Williams brake test. But he recovered quickly from his mistake and rejoined in 6th place. Mark Blundell was less lucky with his Brabham. He'd spun into retirement.
I was enjoying it very much. We had a few problems, a bit of an engine problem, very low on power. But looking at the car, there's a lot of oil on the back of our car, so the car broke away quite suddenly. It won't surprise me if it's had a leak and we've spun on our own oil.
Then it was all over for Nigel Mansell. The Williams' new electronic gearbox had failed, the first blow in a character-building season for Nigel. The McLaren of Gerhard Berger, lying 5th, lost fuel pressure and then all power and needed a push. And then second man Prost had a disastrous tyre stop with the Ferrari. Watch the mechanics on the right rear wheel. This stop lost him so much time that he rejoined in 6th place. But then disaster struck the new second man, Patrese. His Williams' gearbox had failed and spun him out. And it was also the end of Roberto Moreno's race. There he is, running across the zebra crossing to a position of safety. Take a look at what happened. Patrese spins, and then Moreno's Benetton joins the heap before Riccardo can get out of the cockpit and escape. It could have been very much worse. Bertrand Gachot had the Jordan up to 7th in its first race until this spin across the bows of Alesi. Alesi got through safely, but Nelson Piquet was next along and he nearly got involved as Gachot recovered. Mika Häkkinen, who'd had his steering wheel tightened up, finally called it a day. And then we had a great battle for Jean Alesi's eye view of the battle. The Jordan debut ended when Gachot's engine blew and he parked behind Martini's Minardi. And so, almost unnoticed, Senna drove on to a comfortable win in the McLaren, opening his account in exactly the way he'd wanted. And with both Williams Renaults succumbing to gearbox trouble, their Achilles heel was already evident.
So an opening 10 points for the defending champion. Prost relieved to gain 6 from a circuit he never enjoyed. Piquet delighted, both Tyrrells showing, and a useful point for Larousse, plus a few more made later by Senna.
Now the car is ready. The performance speaks for itself. It's a brand new car. We never run full Grand Prix distance with this, with full tank. Today was the first time, and we win a race like this with a lot of lead. So it's a great performance. The car is reliable too. The engine also run very, very well. I had just small problems with the gearbox and a question of keeping on the road, staying away from the wall, coming for tires at the right moment. At the start was very important. So things went very well for us. Our car, although it's running well, is still, I think, a long way from being right. It's only a question of us having the opportunity to set up it properly and learn about it better. And we know that the engine is going to improve too. It's a question of time that Honda will come up with a higher performance engine.
2 Brazilians in the top 3, a result that set up the next race perfectly. As 2 weeks later the scene shifted south to Ayrton Senna's hometown, Sao Paulo. On the road to the Interlagos circuit that hosted the Grand Prix for the 2nd successive year. Senna had never won here or in Rio. A home victory was long overdue in the eyes of the thousands of fans who gathered to glimpse only one man, their world champion, Ayrton Senna. A rarity indeed, a prophet with honour in his own land.
It's always good to be home, but it's extra pressure, of course. I like very much to win here if I can. I've been near to do it many times in the past, but for a number of different reasons we weren't able to do it. So let's hope this weekend we can do something better.
To say the least, the weather was not good all weekend. Black clouds threatened as soon as any sunny periods developed. And in the rain, Ferrari, after their 15-second plus effort in Phoenix, tried to smooth out the system. Pit stop practice designed to reduce time on the jacks to around 7 seconds. More rain in free practice. Nigel Mansell, the man caught out, damaging the front end of his Williams. Berger in the second McLaren, fighting for grip and not finding any. Just one disconcerting moment at a notoriously slippery corner. It also claimed Moreno's Benetton. Fortunately, without serious damage to car or Brazilian driver. The corner also accounted for Jean Alesi, the young Ferrari driver having his bright promise tarnished again. The focus of attention played his part to the full. Ayrton Senna eclipsed his rivals in the Friday session more than half a second faster around the 2.7-mile circuit than Jean Alesi. Come Saturday, the track was conducive to faster times. Mansell in the Williams Renault on one flyer clocked an incredibly rapid lap. His teammate Riccardo Patrese was the first to respond. And it had all the signs of spoiling the celebration party planned for Senna. But in that now familiar fashion, Senna set a target, achieved it. 1:16.393 assured him of pole position and gave Mansell plenty of food for thought. Senna, in a car that he was still not completely satisfied with, seemingly from nowhere had produced a pole-winning lap. The adulation given to Mansell in Britain is reserved for Senna at Interlagos. Senna knew it wouldn't have been possible without his team pulling out all the stops.
The fact that Williams has demonstrated to be so fast, it really put me going, because I don't think under normal conditions we could have beaten them for a qualifying lap.
Senna on pole, Mansell third, while Riccardo Patrese was delighted with his own performance in the Williams that ensured a place on the front row for the first time this season.
It was close, but not enough. Anyway, I think I'm very satisfied with the performance of the team, Williams and Renault. I think they did a great job during the winter, and they provide a car that I think is going to be competitive for the rest of the season. That is the most important thing. And Apart from that, today I drove well. I think I did my best. I couldn't go any quicker, so Ayrton did the pole. Congratulations to him.
The Ferraris were a distant 5th and 6th in qualifying. Jean Alesi ahead of Alain Prost. Both were determined to do better in the race.
Well, the dramas began on the grid with Berger's McLaren catching fire, but the race went ahead, and as the lights went to green, it was Senna ahead, with Mansell and Patrese wheel to wheel for second, then the smoking Berger and the Ferraris of Alesi and Prost and Nelson Piquet's Benetton. Berger's fire seemed to blow itself out, and on down the hill went the field, with the Dallara of Emanuele Pirro getting off the road and onto the grass, but somehow staying in the race. So Senna had the lead, but right from the start there was real pressure from Mansell, which kept up all the way until the routine tyre stops. Senna and Mansell made theirs without changing positions, but Patrese, Berger and Alesi in 3rd, 4th and 6th places all came in on the same lap. This is Patrese's stop. Behind him are Alesi and Berger, and the Ferrari mechanics have to move extremely quickly. Watch for the men in the yellow shirts as the red and white car starts to move. Meanwhile, Nelson Piquet was trying to go the full distance on one set of Pirellis, but the re-shod Patrese was soon stealing his 3rd place. Prost, very unhappy with the number 27 Ferrari, had to make a 2nd tyre stop when in 5th place. He rejoined 7th, behind teammate Alesi. But Alesi was in next with the same complaint, which he passed on to team boss Cesare Fioria.
I have some problem with the handling of the car.
Now into the pits with a puncture. He rejoined, still 2nd, but after all of this he was half a minute behind Senna. But with Senna's gearbox trouble, he started to close fast. Eric Comas retired in smoke and flames with the Ligier Lamborghini. And then, dramatically, Nigel Mansell was spinning like a top. He rejoined, but seconds later, he stopped for good. Here's the spin again. Very graceful in slow motion, but this was no mere driver error. Let's hear from the unlucky Nigel exactly what caused his 2nd successive retirement.
The problem we had, I went into the corner in 6th gear, I changed down to 4th, and it jumped from 4th to 1st gear. Then it locked the rear wheels and you saw it made me spin. I recovered the spin, got going again, pulled for gears, and there's no gears, the transmission, the actual gears and the gearbox have gone.
Maximum points from 2 races for Senna, 0 so far for Mansell. The capability of the Williams demonstrated by Patrese, Berger, Prost and Piquet picking up points despite problems. Senna finished the race drained, mentally and physically, and in no little pain.
Yes, it's a great day for me. I think comparing to this day only 88 in Japan when I won my first championship, I've been very near to win the Brazilian Grand Prix many other occasions. We've been always very competitive, but for different reasons we were never able to do it. And today is a memorable day in my career, in my life, and it's a super day. I'm over the moon.
Wasn't an easy race for the sound of it, but the look of you when you finished the race, it didn't look that easy.
Well, I remember 84, my 2nd race in Formula 1 with the Toleman in South Africa. When I finished in 6th place, I had muscle spasm all over the body, and it was the biggest pain I ever had in my life. Today I had something similar, but only my shoulders and neck, and so it was a tremendous pain but the last few laps, but the desire to win was so big that I kept going, and it was great.
Probably the greatest of Senna's 28 victories to that stage of his career. San Marino in northern Italy, and Imola the venue for round 3 of the Formula 1 World Championship. The teams making their way across Europe from various points. Renault arrived to resume their challenge. What encouragement a win would be. Their partners, Williams, having declared their title ambitions, had 14 races to make an impression. They had a great package, and it still hadn't been enough so far. World champions for McLaren and Williams, Niki Lauda and Keke Rosberg in memory lane. And the Brazilian connection, Emerson Fittipaldi, Ayrton Senna's boyhood idol, with a few words of encouragement.
Well, I'm very pleased, very happy, to see all my friends. I think it's great, I have a good feeling, and so nice to see people that I work together, race against, and it's a beautiful feeling.
There were new models on parade at Imola, the long-awaited Benetton, admired by their former driver, Alessandro Nannini. Nannini out of racing since that terrible helicopter accident last year that severely injured his right arm. Footwork were hoping that the A11C would earn them points. Michele Alboreto had an unfortunate introduction to his. A testing crash ruined any chance of it being ready for San Marino. So Alex Caffey debuted the new car.
Michele, we've seen you limping around the paddock. You're obviously in pain still.
Maybe because I'm getting old. Quite painful at the moment, but I am happy to be here anyway, even because I must use the old car. But I think every lap that we made with this Porsche engine can improve our performance, so I think I'm here for make my job.
Will you be driving in the race, do you think?
Oh, yes, I would like, but I don't think it's possible to qualify the old car. And unfortunately, we have only one new car, so we try to qualify that one. And Alex is in a better condition, so he's right, and he drives the new car.
Showing off their new BT60Y, Brabham, looking for an improvement in fortunes, a team which had the essential elements, but found success elusive. AGS, under new management, introduced Fabrizio Barbazza in place of Stefan Johansson. The Italian, another recruit from Formula 3000. Formula One Supremo Bernie Eccleston with the boss of Formula One's most famous team, Cesare Fiorio.
We think we have made quite a big improvement from Sao Paulo to now, because we have a new front suspension, we have new aerodynamics, and also a good increase in the power of the engine. But we don't know whether this will be enough or not, because Williams and McLaren seem to be very, very fast. And especially Williams, I think this year is doing a fantastic work.
This is Italy. Do you feel as if you're on trial?
Well, of course, here in Italy there is a lot of pressure. There will be, 200,000 people around this circuit, and many of these will be for Ferrari, so we hope to do well. Otherwise we must go out from the back door.
Indeed, great demands on Ferrari to do well on home ground, but Prost in trouble during Friday's practice. And then, things hotting up for Alesi during qualifying in the afternoon. It was Prost that set the Tifosi Pulse Racing with the fastest time of the session. Things looking up for Ferrari, it seemed. Cesare Fiorio certainly thought so, until the Williams Renault of Riccardo Patrese went out and immediately bettered Prost's time on the track where he won the year before. The Williams of Nigel Mansell found Barbazza's AGS a hazard, and he was unable to improve on fourth. It left Ayrton Senna to repeat his Brazilian performance and set the quickest time of the day, from third to first, beating both Patrese and Prost.
To be honest, today we had some problems. I mean, not performance problem, but it's difficult to know what's going on Saturday and then Sunday morning. We have done a lot of tests here, so we know more or less that the car, even with fuel, is working well, and we should not have a surprise on this level. In terms of reliability, we must see and work again, because we don't have a big problem, but we have small problems, and that's I would say normal, because we have done a lot of work in the last months, and we must pay for it a little bit. Even if I suppose that this day, I mean today, should be the worst.
Mika Hakkinen of Lotus in his qualifying routine. He'd made a good start to his Grand Prix career, an unflappable, resolute Finn steeling himself for the test ahead. and he needed all his resolve on the Saturday as the rain tippled down. Nobody could improve their time. Some didn't bother to go out. Those that did had trouble, like Nigel Mansell. There's one man who revels in wet conditions, Satoru Nakajima. He was 4th quickest in the session, better even than Ayrton Senna.
Half an hour before Sunday's race, the rain returned in a relentless deluge. And as the grid was waved off on the warming-up lap, conditions were impossible. Visibility was in short supply. And here on Ferrari's home soil, the fans could only watch dumbfounded as Alain Prost spun across the grass at Rivazza. Gerhard Berger did the same, but he kept the McLaren going. But Prost was stuck. He'd stalled, and to the dismay of the crowd, he was out before the race had even begun. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer, boo, or weep. So to the green light, and as they scrabbled for grip, a perfect start from Patrese put the Williams in front from Senna and Stefano Modina's Tyrrell, which was ahead of Berger's McLaren. All no championship points after 3 races. Nelson Piquet was the next to go on the slippery surface. So he was well dug in, and the marshals had another customer. But the rain had now stopped, and Senna was starting to close on Patrese. Jean Alesi, now carrying all Ferrari's fortunes on his shoulders, elbowed past Modena at Tosa, but was going too fast to make the exit. Thud. Dug in again. So both Ferraris out, and now Patrese slowed. Coming into the chicane, Senna went by into the lead, and Ricciardo made for the pits. Listen to his engines spluttering. The Williams mechanics went to work, and Patrese described his problem over the radio. They did get him briefly back into the race, but after a couple of laps, his race was over.
Race was going well. Unfortunately, I had a problem with the engine. That's an electrical problem, I think. I was driving, I think, very hard to keep Senna behind, but I think I could do it. And also, for me, it was very good to be in front in the wet, because my good feeling for the race was in the dry setup. And I think if I was in front in the wet, I could have even a better chance when it was dry.
Now everyone was changing to dry tyres. Berger did so without losing second place. Senna had already been in, and he'd kept the lead. So it was McLaren-Honda 1 and 2. Tyrrell Hondas were 3rd and 4th until Nakajima's transmission broke. Followed shortly after by Stefano Modina's. The Italian sitting in the cockpit doesn't want to believe it. JJ Leto took his Dallara past a faltering Roberto Moreno for 3rd place, his best ever position. And Senna reeled off another relaxed victory from his Austrian teammate. As they both drove towards the checkered flag, McLaren's domination was complete. Poor Eric van der Poel lost 5th place when the Lamborghini's engine failed, and 2 championship points slipped away.
Keke Rosberg, he manages both Leto and Häkkinen. A good result all round for Lotus, and the only Ferrari in the top 4, the engine in Martini's Minardi. Overall, Senna triumphant.
My main problem was only the engine. The car was not perfect because it was a compromise between wet and dry, but it was good. And my problem was really the engine with the oil pressure. Somehow we had the problem with the oil pressure. I think we had this problem this morning already, and it gave a problem again in the afternoon. And it was more than 30 laps with the oil light flashing. And I dropped the revs immediately on the shifting and also on the straight, start to lift on the straight to not have much revs, and it seemed to work good to at least stabilize the engine. And then I was just trying to control myself with Gerhard, and fortunately for me, unfortunately for him, he also had some problem. And then was possible for me to slow down and still maintain some gap, and then we both were able to finish first and second.
Third place was JJ Leto's best result ever, an outstanding effort, having started in the back half of the field.
Basically, in the beginning of the race, it was very, very difficult conditions. I mean, starting from the 16th place, there was a lot of smoke and everything, and you couldn't see really nothing. And I was just taking easy, and then when we changed the slicks, it was getting better and better, the car, and I was just going for it.
Another delighted Finn, Mika Häkkinen, who came home fifth.
Yeah, it was first time for me racing in a wet condition F1. It was unbelievable. It was, you couldn't see absolutely anything. Even the next car in front of you have a red light, you couldn't see that.
Monaco, the jewel in the Formula One crown, the event of the whole motor racing calendar. By the shores of the Mediterranean, showbiz glamour, side by side with Formula One intensity. Ron Dennis had moulded his McLaren team into the habit of winning, leaving the rest trailing.
Well, we can't speak for our competition. You can hardly expect a team that exists to win to be concerned about winning too much. We're only getting the results that we work for, and other people are going to have to work harder. We're not going to reduce our effort. We know how difficult it is, and I can assure you it really isn't easy. It's very difficult. We only think we get the result that we work for, and other people have to try harder.
A shock for Martin Brundle, his Brabham disqualified from this most prestigious of races for not weighing in when instructed.
Apparently I failed to stop at the red light and passing the weighbridge. Of course I didn't see the red light, otherwise I would have stopped. We know the situation. Clearly it's my fault for not seeing that light. There were a few mitigating circumstances because they changed the procedure with the flagman, which the officials admitted to. But the rules are the rules, and I'm afraid FISA are the policeman, the judge, the jury and the jailer, and there's no way of appeal. And they threw us out of the race meeting for the weekend.
A huge accident on Saturday morning involving Alex Caffey. His luck ran out when his new footwork collided with the barriers. He too was out of the race. Studying the replay, it's amazing that from such a collision, Caffey could emerge relatively unscathed. Indeed, it's a testament to the improved safety standards in Formula One that he was not seriously injured. The car was a write-off. It was lifted off the track in segments. The whole of the back end totally ripped away from the rest of the chassis. Even the aftermath of the accident was a frightening sight. Meanwhile, a badly shaken Alex Caffey received attention from FISA doctor Professor Sid Watkins.
He's got light concussion from his head banging on the car as he hit the Armco barrier. He said he made a little mistake. You see from the film it looked like he hit the wall with his rear tyre going into the swimming pool, which sent him across the road, collecting the apex of the corner, which rocketed him across the other side of the road into the barrier. There's not much left of the car, but fortunately Alex is okay.
More disappointment for Ferrari. Jean Alesi 9th in qualifying, Alain Prost only 2 places better off. The team manager Cesare Fiorio, questions needed answering. Gerhard Berger managed 6th fastest in the second McLaren, with a time set in the first qualifying session. Nigel Mansell improved from 7th on the provisional grid to 5th. While Nelson Piquet, not an advocate of racing in Monaco, was 4th in the new Benetton. 3rd, Riccardo Patrese, out-qualifying his teammate Mansell for the 4th time running. Stefano Modena in the nimble Tyrrell secured a front row grid position for the first time ever. On pole again, Ayrton Senna. He shaved off another 0.2 of a second and still had time to be impressed by Stefano Modena's performance in the Tyrrell.
I think Stefano Modena made a good job today, and if he was able to make such a time, improving so much from the first day, he did a great job. I believe it will be great for us to start on the first row. We know each other, we have respect for each other, and I think we can have a good start and a clean start, and we see then what happens afterwards.
I had a clear lap, I had a precise lap everywhere, and I think I could have done better on a following lap when we changed again the tire and we went out, but I had a person in front of me that stopped, so stopped me the line, so I didn't have a chance to improve my time again. But we are very happy. We improved the car. We are in a good shape for tomorrow, and we're looking forward.
So, V12 Honda versus V10 Honda at the start, but predictably it was Senna who got the jump on Modena, followed by Patrese, Mansell and the rest of the awe-inspiring traffic jam. Down in that traffic jam, Berger ran into the back of Piquet and was left stranded at Saint-Devote. But he was able to get away again without undesirable help from the marshals. Down to Mirabeau, Piquet was fifth, but look at his left rear wheel. His rear suspension had broken, and he parked in the escape road. Senna rapidly built up so huge a lead that he caught a marshal by surprise. Modena was still second, from Patrese and Mansell. And the marshal had a tale to tell his grandchildren in years to come. Another incident which could have been so much worse. Berger's race at the tail of the field ended in the barriers at the swimming pool. And then Modena's engine blew in the tunnel just in front of Patrese. There's the smoke, and there's Patrese bouncing off the barriers. Modena stopped his car at the chicane, and Patrese's car, badly damaged, was out too.
You cannot do anything when you go 260 kilometers an hour. In a corner, and somebody puts down oil, you go off. There is no chance.
And just look at the oil washing out of Modena's ruined engine. As for Modena, he was too disappointed to speak. All this left Prost second to investigate a loose wheel. And this time the Ferrari team got a wheel nut stuck under the back of the car. When he rejoined, he was fifth behind teammate Alesi and Moreno's Benetton, which Senna lapped on his way to a fourth consecutive victory. The 1991 championship was starting to look pretty well sewn up. But Nigel Mansell scored at last with a splendid second place. The Williams team in the pits were delighted. The transmission had held together, and as Senna and Mansell congratulated each other, perhaps they both knew that the real battle was just beginning.
So Mansell's first points of the year, Alesi ahead of his illustrious teammate Prost, a reward for Moreno's hard work and a first point of the season for Pirro. But Senna with that perfect score, 4 out of 4.
I'm very satisfied with the result, of course. It's a great victory, and I would say nothing. I had some problems, but I would say nothing because what it matters is what we achieve in the end. Is the result and is the victory that counts. Another 10 points for the championship. But for sure, to race here in Monte Carlo, almost 2 hours race, it's very hard physically because it's bumpy and it hurts a lot. Your shoulders, your neck, and so on. And if you have also to change gears, it really hurts. But I won, and I'm happy, and that's it.
A quarter of the way into the season, and Senna galloping away into the distance, 29 points better off than anyone else, and 34 more than Mansell. the equivalent of 3 race wins and a third. But even at Monaco, Mansell was not trouble-free.
I had a number of problems. One was slow change with the gearbox, but I'm very happy because it got me to the end of the race. Twice the engine cut and stopped on the circuit, and I had to restart it by using the clutch. But then I was catching Alain, which surprised me a little bit with all the problems, and then I don't know who blew up, but there's a lot of oil and everyone was keeping to the right and going for the chicane. It was quite exciting, but it was reasonably safe.
McLaren with a commanding lead in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari and Williams both expected to challenge, lagging behind. The crumbs for Benetton, Tyrrell and Dallara. Transatlantic for round 5, Montreal and the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve at the beginning of May. 2.75 miles round. Senna had won 2 of the last 3 races here. Resuming a promising career blighted by injury, the British driver Johnny Herbert, given another chance at Lotus in place of Julian Bailey.
It was just after Julian had a few problems, I think financially. It gave me a chance, because I'm very close to Peter, that I could step in his replacement.
Alex Caffey's problems continued too. A road accident ruled him out, and Stefan Johansson was named as replacement at footwork. Significant changes too at Ferrari. Cesare Fiorio had been held responsible for the team's scrappy performances thus far, so was replaced by Claudio Lombardi, who'd been running the Lancia Rally team, and Piero Ferrari.
My new job is more or less like on the old days, but now I'm overlooking all the activity. The only new person in the racing department is Engineer Lombardi, which is coming from rally racing from Lancia, and he is responsible on the all activity at home and on the racing track.
Really, this is a technical job, I think 80% Formula One. So really, you can have a fantastic organization and so on, but if the car is not fast enough, and very good driver as we have, if the car is not fast enough, there is nothing to do. So I think this is the challenge. First is a technical challenge.
Now, contrary to widely held beliefs, it's not all work and politics in Formula One. This is the mechanics' raft race across the Olympic rowing basin. It was eventually won by the Jordan team. A first, if unlikely, win for them in an impressive debut season. Jubilation from the team left on the bank. It's an event with few rules, and that means fair cheating all round. Back to business, and a rare sight of a McLaren in trouble. Senna's engine blew during practice, and oil deposited on the track caused the Williams of Riccardo Patrese to crash. He suffered bruising to his neck and chest, but was pronounced okay to race. Patrese can ill afford a crash of any kind. The spare car at Williams is the sole preserve of Nigel Mansell. A wet track for Friday qualifying, but everyone attempted to set a time. Mansell was the quickest of all, but some 15 seconds slower than he might have expected had the circuit been dry.
It's quite bumpy, but you know, when it's raining, it's a big gamble. So I mean, we're just happy that we're on pole position today. I hope it snows tomorrow.
A wish not granted. It was all change by Saturday morning, dry and clear, and for once Ayrton Senna was eclipsed in qualifying. His good time of 1:20.3 was beaten by both the Williams cars, and Senna had to settle for third place on the grid. Then came Mansell, 1:20.2, averaging over 122 miles an hour, demonstrating that the gearbox problems were surmountable and the ELF fuel provided extra zip. That also, of course, applied to Patrese, and he, with a late flourish, stole pole position Senna style, making it an all-Williams front row.
This is an hard race for everybody, car, drivers, and the track, in effect, also if there is a new asphalt, it is as bumpy of last year, and because of that we don't have an easy life, I should say, tomorrow for sure.
Well, nothing in Grand Prix racing is easy. 69 laps, Prost getting a bit crossed up, and Senna going past him. Down to the hairpin for the first time, it was Mansell, Patrese, Senna, Prost, Berger and Moreno. But on Aguri Suzuki's Lola, a fuel line broke and the whole car went up. McLaren's problems in Canada began with Berger's retirement with misfiring. Meanwhile, Alain Prost's gearbox wasn't right. Listen to him looking for gears. So he was passed by Alesi, and then Nelson Piquet came up into his mirrors, and the Benetton went by as well. Pedal to the metal and out of the slipstream and past his teammate. But Senna's race was run. The World Championship leader was out of the Canadian Grand Prix.
Well, I had the electrical problems early in the race, and I had no information from my dashboard, computer and rev counter. I had no revs reading. I was just changing gears by my ear and no information whatsoever. And I called on the radio. I told the team that I thought was electrical problem and also a battery, probably a battery going flat. But I couldn't do anything, so I continued for about 10 laps. Then the engine completely expired with the lack of energy. I think it was just battery gone or some short circuit.
And Prost's gearbox, troublesome throughout the race, stopped him a lap later. Truly, this was turning into the year of gearbox failures. The other Ferrari of Alesi didn't last much longer. Its engine failed. Both McLarens out, both Ferraris out, Williams now 1 and 2. In the closing stages, Stefano Modena was charging in the Tyrrell. Patrese was slowing with his own gearbox maladies. Mansell could only coast to a halt with a dead engine as Nelson Piquet inherited a lucky victory for Benetton. Mansell could only reflect on the wisdom of the old motor racing cliché, to finish first, first you have to finish.
Nobody more surprised than Nelson Piquet to pick up the points, or more delighted than Stefano Modena to inherit second place, the best result he'd ever achieved. Patrese salvaged some pride for Williams, but Piquet had the victory.
Well, 3 laps to go, I already it slowed down because Mansell was about 50 seconds in front of me, and Gerhard was right behind. And I said, that's it, go for second. Then I got the news from the radio that Mansell it's slowing down, and I just tried to push again the last lap, but when I saw him, I couldn't believe it. It was very, very good, very lucky.
You must feel a bit sorry for Nigel, though.
Well, I don't feel sorry for nobody. This thing happened with me already. I think it's motor racing. I think a winner will finish in the checkered flag first.
But Nigel Mansell's misfortune did overshadow everything. Just when it seemed the season had turned round for him, frustration again.
Well, they've just brought the car back, and as often happens in motor racing, the thing fired up and all the gears are there. So some electronic problem, probably due to some type of overheating relation.
A Tyrrell in second place for the first time since Monaco over a year before. And that produced an obviously satisfied Stefano Modena.
I think the team deserved this position, but probably was deserved more in Monaco than here. I'm very happy, and I'm happy more for the team.
More celebrations at Jordan. The significance of the result meant that they'd almost certainly be out of pre-qualifying after the midway point of the season.
I was quite emotional, I have to say. You know, it's a great day for everybody. For me personally, I feel very excited about it, but mainly because you know, the mechanics and the drivers, and they committed to us ever before the car turned the wheel, and that's quite a brave thing to do. And the mechanics that we have, engineers, have all been with me a long time, and we brought them through the formula. We didn't hire in a lot of people from Formula One. We wanted to do it our way, and I feel very happy and very proud for them because they stuck with it, and this is justification to what they've done over the winter.
Yeah, it's great. You know, for a team which is in pre-qualifying, to be now 5th or 6th team in the championship, because that's what matters to us. It's just great. You know, it's something for everyone has been working a lot for, and it's an achievement. It was our goal, and we have reached it.
Mexico in midsummer, 10,000 feet above sea level, a severe test of stamina for both driver and car. It was here that it emerged that Harvey Postlethwaite, the talented Tyrrell designer, had left the team to join Mercedes, currently in the World Sports Car Championship. A surprise move.
Well, Harvey was a very important and senior member of our team, and his sudden departure obviously will affect us in the short term. But during his period with us, he has built up a very strong technical team, and there is no reason why we should not continue to improve as the season goes on.
Another designer who left in mid-season, the influential John Barnard from Benetton, soon after Piquet had won the Canadian Grand Prix. Senna flew in from Brazil to Mexico, nursing a nasty head injury. It had required 6 stitches, the legacy of a jet ski accident near his beachside home.
Well, I was having some leisure time, just some relaxation, and unfortunately I had an accident with one of my jet skis, and I had an impact on the back of my head, and fortunately that caused me some pain and some discomfort, but I had the proper care taken immediately, and I have had no problems, no side effects since the impact, only a cut, which hopefully will not be much discomfort over the weekend.
But suddenly Senna appeared curiously accident-prone. At the notorious Peraltada corner in Friday qualifying, he approached over the limit, hit the tyre barrier and overturned. Fortunately, it was not as serious as it might have been. Senna was eventually pulled out unhurt and departed for medical checks, no doubt rueing being over-adventurous. He'd attempted to take the corner in a higher gear than normal. The car hit a bump and was out of control in an instant. It was a worrying moment for everyone at the track.
It's a nasty corner, and what just happened to Ayrton just typifies how dangerous that corner is. I mean, he went very quick, and you thought that he was going slow until he hit the wall, and then you realise what speed he's doing. And I'm very pleased to see that he managed to get out of the car.
The world champion, having been seen by the FISA doctor, Professor Sid Watkins, was pronounced fit.
I just lost the car at the quick corner and in the middle of it, and had a big shunt, but I'm fine.
You're fine?
Yes, no problem, no problem.
Also suffering, Riccardo Patrese from a debilitating stomach bug, but he still managed the quickest time. His 1:16.6 was better than last year's qualifying effort from Gerhard Berger, and 0.3 of a second faster than his teammate Nigel Mansell. Mansell, meanwhile, was holding off Ayrton Senna for second place on the front row. Initially, at least, round 6 was auguring well for Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very pleased because it's the second race running that the race car broke down in the pits. Still got a sense of humour. I jumped in the T car and I got very close to my teammates' time, so I'm very, very pleased because the engine was not quite up to the match of the race car, so the team's done a great job again.
Saturday's qualifying session was disrupted by rain, but Riccardo Patrese was still the fastest man on the circuit. Williams were in business.
As the pre-race tension built up, Riccardo Patrese was determined not to be beaten from his second consecutive pole position, but once again Mansell was quicker away, with Senna and Alesi chasing, and Alain Prost close behind. Now watch Alesi on the left going inside Senna, while Piquet goes inside Prost. And this is the view in Berger's mirrors. It was all a bit close for comfort through the complex of corners after the start, and Alain Prost was losing out in the traffic. But behind Mansell, Senna was now wheel-to-wheel with Alesi, moving wickedly across on him once he was in front. Behind them, Stefano Modena was pushing Berger hard when Berger's engine exploded. Both Berger and Modena were lucky not to go off on the oil that came out of the burst Honda. But others were not so lucky. Pierluigi Martini's Minardi was one that came to grief. And now Ayrton Senna was under pressure from Patrese, recovering from his bad start to take second place. Once past Senna, Patrese began to close on teammate Nigel Mansell. Clearly the Williams Renaults were the equipment to have here. And Alesi's Ferrari got past Senna too. So now the World Championship leader was down to fourth. Patrese had his eyes on the lead, and on lap 15 he was alongside down to the first corner. But Mansell wasn't going to make it easy. A tense Frank Williams watched as Patrese stayed alongside through the complex and came out ahead. Now it was Alesi's turn to challenge Mansell. But sometimes if you get by, you're going too quick to stay on the island. With Mansell now worried by overheating, Ayrton Senna was going to challenge him too. But Nigel managed to hold him off. Not for want of trying by Ayrton. Finally, Jean Alesi spun out for good, with clutch failure. And Riccardo Patrese went on to take a magnificent victory here in Mexico. And it certainly made Patrick Head's day.
Well done, you bastard. Good stuff.
For Riccardo and Nigel, it was a sweet moment. The McLarens were well and truly vanquished.
What encouragement for Williams with that 1-2 and Senna almost a minute behind. Andrea De Cesaris with another good finish. More points for Roberto Moreno and a first of the season for Eric Bernard. But the Williams pair provided most of the action.
Well, it was a normal racing. I think Nigel tried to keep his position, and I charged very hard. I think it was a quite exciting moment. Probably it was good for the spectators and for the show. I think in that particular moment I felt quicker than Nigel. He probably had some problem, I don't know. My car was running perfectly since the beginning to the end, and I didn't have really any problem to push very hard in the middle of the race and then to control the latest charge of Nigel. Also, if really I have to say that he was pushing very hard, because at the end I had really a big trouble to keep him behind.
After Mexico, the Formula One teams moved back to Europe. Since last season, the venue for the French Grand Prix had changed from Paul Ricard in the south to Magny-Cours by Nevers, nearer Paris. A purpose-built circuit with a spacious paddock with room for the masses of high-tech equipment that a Formula One team needs to survive. On home ground, the FISA president, Jean-Marie Balestre, with footwork boss Jackie Oliver. Oliver had decided that his team would revert to Ford engines rather than the Porsche units they'd run so far in the season without success. Porsche agreed the engine needed further development, and with the team about to slip into pre-qualifying, both parties eventually agreed that testing the engine in the Formula One environment did not suit either of them. It was baking hot on Friday for the first session of qualifying. Ayrton Senna, of course, was the first to really get to grips with the track, setting the mark at 1:16.6. A pensive Nigel Mansell having to be content with second fastest time. Alain Prost, ambitious to show well at Magny-Cours. He was fourth fastest. But ahead of Prost came Jean Alesi, third quickest in the new Ferrari 643. At last, a reason to be cheerful. For Senna's supporters, even more so with him on pole position. That was until Saturday, when Mansell went out and set a 1:14 1:15.895. A time that would take some beating. Alesi couldn't do it, 1:15.8, although that was good enough for second. Once Senna was out again, he beat Mansell for pole position. Senna conceded. The psychological advantage was important, and his time looked good enough until an inspired Prost suddenly found a little extra. Ferrari's high spot of the season. The ex-world champion fastest at his home Grand Prix in a brand new car.
It's difficult for everybody, for me, because a lot of pressure this track, and to bring a new car like this and having no problems at all during the weekend, it's a big show from the team. I mean, they work very well, and the mechanics were very hard in a few days, and it's quite spectacular. Not to have any big problems, and reliability and performance was better and better through the weekend, so it's good.
Ferrari's joy was short-lived. Patrese had qualifying tyres left and used them wisely at the end of the session. 1:14.559 was a massive improvement in 24 hours.
Mainly the temperature was a little bit cooler, and I think also the track became a bit quicker, maybe rubber down. So the track became a bit quicker because of that, and especially the temperature, because yesterday was much hotter.
When Olivier Gerhard splattered oil on the racing line in the last minute of qualifying, he did Williams a favour. Following right behind Gerhard was Senna on a flyer. He hit the greasy bit and skated out over the line. Third place was all he could manage on the grid.
A little bit of oil on the circuit that was dropped by a car that was just 1 minute before me on the circuit, and then the track was slipperier. During the lap I lost the car a little bit in a corner because it was slippery, but finishing the lap it was really slippery here at the chicane, and I just lost the car putting the power down, but crossed the finish line instead of facing forward 90 degrees, so I had a little bit of fun, but there was no danger because it's very slow, that part of the circuit, and wide, so it was safe.
Another Patrese pole position, another disastrous Patrese start. His electronic gear change selected the wrong gear, and he had to watch as the rest rushed by, led by Prost, at the head of his home Grand Prix. Gachot was the first casualty with the Jordan. And at the end of lap 1, it was Prost from Mansell, Senna, Berger and Alesi. This is Piquet's rear view as he passed Benetton teammate Moreno. Once again, Berger was an early casualty, his third consecutive engine failure. And here's Morbidelli trying to pass Piquet. All of which helped Patrese up a couple of places. Up at the front, Prost was still leading the Ferrari Renaissance, but Mansell was gaining ground. As they came up to lap de Cesaris, Mansell seized his chance and pulled away into the lead. But the routine tyre stops were to reverse the position. Prost's lasted 7 seconds. Mansell's lasted 10.5 with a difficult front wheel. And the Frenchman was back in front. Marc Blundell hit the pit wall when lying 11th. But at the front, in the traffic, Mansell was on top of Prost once more, and he muscled his way through to retake the lead. Today, no one was going to deny him. But it was a great debut for the new Ferrari, and this was very much a race to raise Ferrari's hopes. On the very last lap, Jean Alesi in the number 28 Ferrari was pushing Senna hard for third place, and so nearly made it. For Mansell, the checkered flag was waving at last. After the race, Alain Prost was the first to congratulate the Englishman.
Hey, good old man.
Going the podium.
10 points at last for Nigel Mansell. 2 Ferraris in the top 4, but no sign of a win for them as yet. Personally for Mansell, a significant moment. His 17th Grand Prix win, an English driver's record.
I'm still recovering. I'm in a little bit of shock. It might sound silly after all these years in Formula One, but to get past 16 for an Englishman is history. And I've made history for myself and my country. Alain had a fantastic start. Unfortunately, I had a good start, which was ironic because the racing line was on the right, but he made a fantastic start and I followed him, and then it was just a question of trying to keep going. Alain was going very quick at the beginning, and then I managed to get past, and then he passed me in the pits again. And then afterwards it was just a question of just working very hard because the Ferrari was going very well, Alain was going very fast, and he had some traffic problems and I had some big traffic problems. It just made for an interesting race.
My start was very good, one of the best maybe I've done in my career. I was quite pleased to be first in the first corner. The car was very good when it was full of fuel. Then it started to be worse and worse, but that's a bit normal. The car is new, and if the race was now, I mean, I would change the setup for sure. But I'm quite pleased with the second position anyway.
A week later, across the channel, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. It had been vastly remodelled. The championship in the balance. 18 points the difference between Senna and Mansell. 4 races ago, it had been 40. Also profiting from Senna's misfortune, his own teammate, Gerhard Berger.
I mean, the first problem for me was on the start. I had a good start. I was on the same line with Riccardo Patrese in the first corner. He just turned in. I even couldn't brake enough not to let him go over my front wheel, and it bent my front suspension. And then I had quite a big problem on the car, so that's why I had to stop early for the tires. The rest I had just to take care about the car, about the front tire, and I had a big pain in my hand because I lost all my skin. And so I just tried to go as smooth as possible to finish the race. At the end it changed a little bit, the result, and I'm quite happy for that.
At the halfway stage in the season, McLaren were in command. Williams were improving, the rest was struggling. The major disappointment, undoubtedly, Ferrari.